Welcome to the last week of the course Computer-Aided Decision Support Systems. These will be last 1 or 2 lectures where we will be discussing data visualization. We have recently discussed the HTML and PHP. How do we connect that? When we connect that, we try to get the user interface. Where the user interface, we need to present the data, we need to present the function and the form of the data types that you have. Now, the data visualization would be covered in this lecture, where we will be covering the definition of it, then some advantages and disadvantages. Yes, data visualization, obviously it is used for multiple merits, but there could be certain demerits. Some points could be missed, that also I will discuss. Then significance of data visualization in Industry 4.0 or in today's world, that is big data, how this is being used to present the structured or useful form of it. Then framework of data visualization, then visualization types and some examples. Let me start with the definition. Defining data visualization. By definition, data visualization is only representation data using common graphics. These graphics would be charts, plots, tables, infographics, or anything like even animations. Now, by definition, data visualization helps us to have a representation of the data in various forms, in various graphics, so that we are able to communicate the message. This message could be the relationships between data, the data driven insights, so that one is able to understand or one can relate with the trends, outliers, patterns. This helps us to take the data driven decisions. Making an interface, developing your program, developing your website, developing your PHP and HTML programs is okay, but finally how to present that? What kind of colors would you choose? What is your audience? Trying to understand the audience. I will talk about major tips when we try to have a good data representation. The form of the data, the function of the data. The form should not kill the function should not be such represented that the form is not even interactive, it is not even aesthetically looking well. So, it is important to have good understanding of what your data is, what are you trying to represent, who is the audience, all these things when you are trying to generate an idea. Even when we are talking about data visualization, design thinking sessions also helps us to understand it. When we try to have a concept of design thinking, we try to first empathize with what the user would like to have, what the user would like to see, what the user would like to visualize. Then we try to define what our problem statement is. Then we try to bring up some ideas over it. So, this is how data visualization framework also we will talk about in the coming slides. So, data visualization is a very important step in data science process, which allows the teams or the individuals to convey the data more effectively to colleagues, to decision makers, so that the teams can organize the reporting systems, specifically define template views to monitor performance. We can't miss that the data visualization is not only limited to the performance dashboards. For example, text mining as an analyst may use the word cloud to capture key concepts and trends or hidden relationship with unstructured data. Alternatively, these might also use the graph structure to have relationships between the entities of the knowledge graph itself. So, there are certain ways data visualization is used. Yes, there are certain upsides and downsides. If I talk about the advantages or the merits, number one is the clarity. Data visualization helps us to have great clarity on what we are trying to present to our audience. That means one graph represent 1000 words. Telling just in a theory or writing just in a report that okay, the GDP has risen by 5% in the last 5 years, or the average income has risen by around 2% in the last 1 month, or presenting them in a graph, putting in a pie chart, India, various states, how the GDP has risen. So, one graph represents 1000 words telling the whole story and putting them in a one graph. That is why we need data visualization. So, our eyes just flow like water. It tries to follow the equilibrium, it tries to follow the lowest path. So, data visualization is such design so that the colors are also chosen. The best part or the most prominent part that we would like to show is highlighted in a way that might be put in a red color, that might be put in a yellow color, so that the person sees, or that might be put in a bold letters or bigger sizes, so that one is able to see what is the overall zest of the visual representation that we are trying to bring in. So, we can quickly identify red from blue, squares from circles. So, that is why our culture is visual, which includes everything from the arts, the reports, advertisements, journals, animations. The data visualization is a form of visual art that grabs our interest and keeps our eyes on the message that the person who has designed is trying to present. So, when we try to look at a chart, we very quickly try to see the trends and outliers in it. The precision is also one of the advantages. In data visualization, what specifically purpose is? So, we can have a target value that could be bold or a contrasting color, or maybe highlighted using certain other ways. So, data visualization helps us to have an efficiency or an ease of sharing the information. So, we interactively explore the opportunities, we visualize the patterns and relationships. When we visualize the patterns and relationships, we also maximize the ideas with minimum inks. Here I think I would say 1000 words is equal to one chart. With the upsides, certain downsides are there that I can say the demerits. Sometimes in the big data we have a lot of information, and what we are trying to target to, or the primary goal, is missed. That is why I showed you the framework or the process for the big data presentation. How do we present the data? Now, sometimes the basic message is missed. We try to sometimes go into the form of the data, the function is missed. There is always a battle between form and function. For instance, you have an engineer or a data scientist who is trying to write a code, who understands what is the function of the data, or we have the data administrator who has a goal to be put in. The data scientist sometimes has a different viewpoint on what color of colors could be chosen. So, data administrator has to take the call that the function we cannot miss. This is more important. Function, for instance, if I need to say, so IIT Kanpur has risen in its QS ranking in the last 10 years or so, I would only say a rank chart, or I can say maybe a histogram showing the ranks between different years of IIT Kanpur and other institutions in India. This is my function and form both coming up. Sometimes I just might like to put, okay, the form is more important, the color is more important, and the basic function is sometimes missed. The basic function, for instance, the rank of IIT Kanpur has risen in the last 10 years, and if I try to say with if I try to compare with the other IITs or other institutions in India, or if I try to compare with the world top rankings, IIT Kanpur would still see its ranking down there, maybe at 48 or 100 or so, wherever the rank is in the last years. So the form of the data and the function of the data, function is to present that our data or IIT Kanpur has risen or enhanced its ranking in the last few years. Accordingly, it has to be put. I'll talk about this more when I will talk about the cheating with scales. So data visualization sometimes gives the information that is either incorrect or biased. For example, when viewing a visualization with many different data points, it is easy to have an interpretation or an inaccurate assumption. Or sometimes the visualization is just designed even wrong, so that it is biased or it is confusing the person. The correlation does not indicate cause. So the causation is always missed in correlation. Correlation could only tell you, in comparison to the boys in the institution, the girls have scored more marks. But what is the reason of that? For that, we need to do further study. For that, we need to have certain regression analysis also. Based upon the certain parameters, what were the parameters? The girls might be spending more hours in study, the boys might be spending more hours in just roaming around, or the girls might have higher ranks in the admission itself, those who are there. There might be certain parameters which could be used or which could be set, and regression analysis or certain other kinds of analysis could be taken to have exactly what is the cause of this. Sometimes, as I said, the core statements can be lost in translation. With translations, when we talk about the data visualization framework, we try to map the data with the basic data and try to have a visual graph of it. The basic or the core statements are sometimes missed. So these could be certain demerits of the data visualization even. Now let me talk about significance of data visualization in the world nowadays. So big data, it is important that data should make a good sense, it should be more understandable. So the importance of data visualization is very simple, it helps people see, interact with and better understand the data. So whether simple or complex, the data visualization can bring everyone on same page, regardless of their level of expertise. Audience, though versatile, everyone has to be brought on same page, because these days definitely audience that you get, we do not know a school be a great coder even, or even a person who is there as a CEO might not able to understand what is the basic code in which this website is designed or so. So different audience or different parts of the audience, who your audience is and what kind of the interaction you are trying to do. Are you only going to present the data, are you going to interact with them, or are you going to tell a story? That also I will discuss what kinds of types of the data interaction or data visualizations that you have. So this is important, and also it is hard to think of a professional industry that doesn't benefit from the data nowadays. So the concept of the citizen data scientist is on rise, where skill sets are changing to accommodate the data driven world. So it is increasingly valuable for professionals to be able to use data to make decisions and use visuals to tell stories of when the data informs who, what, when, where and how the specific field or the specific topic that you are trying to discuss is presenting. So data visualization, if I say in the big data, it sits between the data analysis and you need to have a storytelling. So here do we have data visualization. Now, this is the age of big data, where we are trying to talk about the trillions of the rows of the data that is being generated each day. So, in this case, data visualization is not only to dress up a graph so that it makes to look up the information or the infographic is there. The effective data visualization is a delicate balance between the form and function. I will have to put that here once again, form versus function. A very simple graph could be too boring, that is if the form is too form. Simple is boring in the case of form, so that no one notices it, but it can still make a powerful information could be extracted from it. Simple is boring. For instance, if just in a black and white form itself only a line graph shows from the number of students who have risen to take NPTEL courses, it could be just given, okay, from 500 it has risen to 50,000 in last 10 years. This could be very simple, but this 500 to 50,000 is 100 times rise. It is a powerful message that it is a 100 time rise of the number of students who are taking the courses in specific field, maybe mechanical engineering or computer science and engineering. So, these could be very simple, but it could give a powerful message. On the other hand, form versus function, if I say, the form could be very stunning visualization with lot of colors. I would say a complex visualization, but in this case, as I said in the previous slide as well, the core statement might be missing. For instance, if I just say, okay, in mechanical engineering these many students have taken the courses, in computer science these many, in electrical these many people have cleared the courses, a lot of information is given, is just one in A4 size poster. So, it has a lot of information, but finally what it is trying to tell is that the number of people is risen by 100 times in who are taking the courses in NPTEL. So, sometimes the complex visualization could miss the core statement, or it could not present the message very powerfully. So, the data and the visuals needs to work together. There is always a balance between them, and this art of combining these two, form and function, is actually the data visualization itself. So, in big data, because we have lot of data, we have lot of ways the data is coming, what specifically is the function, what specifically is the message we are trying to give, from there itself the data has to be driven. To understand this, let us try to see what is the framework of data visualization. When I talk about the word framework, it means how do we design our data visualization. It could be simply 3 layers. We have data layer, we have mapping layer, and the graphic layer, where actually we are going to choose the kind of the plot or the kind of the chart that we have and what kind of data inputs that we have. So, here generally we have different data sources, maybe data source 1, data source 2, and data source 3, which I am putting it as my stored data. So, here the data is collected from the data sources. We call it data mining, we call it data collection, we call it data map reduce, which is collected here, and then we try to map the layer. Here the map reduce function comes into play more prominently. We have a mapper, different data points come here. From here itself we now go to the graphics. Let me say I am putting a histogram here, and from the mapper different kind of data points are taken. From the mapper itself different data layers could be taken. I might say okay, this layer is going here, so it is going here, this one is also coming here, from here the information goes here. How does this work? Let us try to talk about this thing. The data layer is having a purpose of locating and obtaining the data. Locates the data or obtains the data. Now, the importing data in a proper format is also important here. I talked about the different kinds of the data, if you remember, NOIR, nominal, ordinal, interval and ratio scale data. This is just a categorical data. NNO, I and RR, quantitative data. Depends upon what kind of data we have. The relating data or proper correspondence is also important. Here in the data layer itself, the data analysis and aggregation is taken here. Because big data, multiple points, millions of or trillions of the data sets could be there, whether the data is in a discrete form or continuous form, it is ordered, unordered, or do we need to transfer the categorical data into quantified form, or is the quantified data, is it solely to be presented in the low or high or yes or no. So, these translations could happen. This is known as data aggregation, where we try to get the final data, because we are not talking about the data analytics right now, we will be talking about the data visualization, in which the aggregate data is only to be presented finally for the proper visual views that we are trying to get. Now, this aggregate might be, we might like to have a pie chart, we might like to have a line diagram, we might like to have a scatter plot, or maybe more complex plots such as the fan plot, the eye plot. Those could be taken, depends upon the understanding of the person who is trying to read the data. If the person is simple, just a data administrator or maybe the business investor only, he would better understand the basic graphics, the bar graph, the line graph, pie charts. This could be easily understood by them. If the person is a student of statistics, the person could be given the data, different kinds of the graphs such as box and whisker plots could be given, the bullet graph could be given, then fan plot could be given, so that the person understand what is the data, what is the overall information the data is trying to extract. Now, here data aggregation is important, and the kind of the data that we have is important. This data layers tries to give us the information that what are we going to feed into the mapping layer. Next comes the second layer, which is the mapping layer, which means we associate the appropriate geometry with corresponding data channels. So, it could be the data, as I said, in a quantitative form, or it could be in a categorical form. In a quantitative form, it could be maybe the position of the data, length of the data, position, length, then maybe area, volume, density. I am just taking some examples of the I and R. In the case of nominal ordinal, it could be just maybe the hue, texture, the names, etc. Now, these are connected, the data analysis algorithms are put so that we try to get the corresponding data channels which could be connected to our next layer, that is the graphic layer. Now, in the graphic layer, what we have is the final conversion of geometry into when I say geometry, geometry is the kind of the data points that we have taken aggregate from the data layer, and in the mapping layer we have tried to map it what the kind of the results that we are trying to present here. So, here the conversion of geometry into display, which means we try to select the charts or graph or plot or table, and we try to select the colors, and we try to see whether it has to be just presentation or interaction. So, this is important. So, when I talk about presentation or interaction or the interactive storytelling, this comes in our styles of the data visualization. Data visualization styles, they are majorly 3 styles. We try to have the interactive visualization, next is we try to have the presentation visualization, and it could be even the interactive storytelling. When I say the word interactive, means there is an interaction between the audience and the person who is going to present the data or the website that you are trying to present. So, it has to have the user input as well. Here we have user input in between is taken. That means it could be intended for single investigator, or it could be for the collaborators. For example, if I am trying to define the proposal that I have put before a ministry, I will take my presentation, I will take different kinds of the graphs or a different kind of the options available. I would say this is option 1. If they have a query, I will come to the option 3. If I have a query, I can say okay, I have another option, that is the option 5, that is also available. So, interaction also happens, and the data is presented, we are ready with the graphs, we are ready with different kinds of the website presentations, we are able to connect with that, and we are trying to have an interface or the input from the user as well. So, user input is always there. So, here for example, if I have also developed a prototype already for a already taken project, the prototype is to be presented before the final review committee. The prototype has to have an interaction, the person would like to use the prototype. The prototype, how do we present that? Okay, this is my Android interaction, this is my phone application. If you click this button, this graph would open. If you try to click, if you try to input these values, maybe for example, if it is a fluid mechanics experiment, if I say okay, if this is the fluid flow between 5 milliliter per seconds to 22 milliliters per seconds, this is the opening of the valve that you need to keep. So, these kind of interactions, that could also help us to have an interactive visualization where we need to design it accordingly. So, the pre-renders based upon inputs are there. So, Tableau public is also one of the examples that use the interactive data visualization. This is an example. Next comes our presentation visualization. It is only used for communication. This means I am not trying to interact with them, I am only giving the information. The example could be a poster that I am trying to present in a hard copy, or the poster that is displayed. Okay, this is the output. Number of students have risen from 500 to 50,000 in last few years. This is just a poster. There is no interaction or input from them. So, this is just a communication, that means no user input is there. So, it does not support any user input. So, it is highly polished prior. Which means we cannot interact with them, whatever the information is taken by them or it is understood by them, it has to be final. So, we have to be very careful in designing it, and it is polished prior, it is well tested or well thought of prior itself, that how would it present. The example could be anything. For example, I would say rank of the institutes if I compare, just simple presentation. Another kind of presentation or the data visualization is storytelling. When we are trying to narrate something, that we have an interactive web pages. So, in this case the presentations are always there, but these are done through interactive web pages. Here the story is, if you do this, this happens. So, if else loop is well used here in this kind of this data presentation or data visualization, where we try to narrate something. We narrate using data, we tell a story. The purpose here is we invite the viewers to explore further. For instance, if I am trying to present my proposal before ministry, it is a technical proposal or maybe fluid mechanics itself. I would say fluid mechanics has certain experiments. These experiments are very important for the students of the first year of civil engineering, of mechanical engineering, of production engineering to understand. Now, in this way, the word civil engineering, mechanical engineering, production engineering could be a link, where they, if they click, they try to understand what is civil engineering or mechanical engineering. In further itself, if I say there are certain experiments such as Bernoulli's theorem, or it could be some turbine, maybe Pelton turbine. So, this Bernoulli's, Pelton, if they click that, a picture pops up which tries to tell them, okay, what does this theory, okay, what is the Pelton turbine, what are the other kinds of turbines which are there. So, this interacts or invites the viewers to click more and more to have an understanding of that. The most of the web pages that you see, for instance, if you just see Wikipedia itself, the words which are there, they always try to have a link over it, which are complex words or which are words not very common. Also, the names of the person in a specific Wikipedia page, if you are trying to read, if the name of a person who is a prominent figure, the name of a person would also hyperlink. If you try to link that, if you try to click that, it would open the page of the person where you can see the information about that person. So, this is known as interactive storytelling. So, these are the ways or the styles we try to present our visualization. There could be certain tools depending upon what kind of the business information that you have. It could be used for business intelligence, or it is only to be used by the document presentation. It depends upon what kinds of the tools that you have, what kinds of the final output or final presentation that you have or final targets that you have. The data visualization can help you to approach all of these. Now, there are certain tips when we are trying to talk about the data visualization, specifically what we are trying to see or what we are trying to present and whom are we going to present. These are very important. So, that means we need to understand 4 major points. Number 1, what is your story? I will just jot them down here, then I will try to discuss them further. So, what is the kind of data? So, which chart fits best the presentation or the visualization that you are trying to display to your audience, and who is your audience. When I say what is your story, it means what your data is trying to tell even. So, all the data that you are trying to present, the data visualization that you are trying to present here is going to tell a story. Is this story easy to understand? For example, it could be, are your sales up or down? Is the admission in the different institutes or in engineering institutes in Uttar Pradesh is on rise or decrease? Are the expenses within control? So, what is the reaction towards the new products which are launched the last year? So, what is the story, whether it has to be interactive, presentation or storytelling? This only is taken once you are very sure that what your story is or what is your final output that you are trying to target, or what do you want the other person to understand. So, once your target is fixed, that what you are trying to present, what finally you are going to get out of it, then comes what kind of data do you have or what do you want to explain through this data. So, is it a qualitative? That is, we have become better than before, or we have added new features in our product, or is it even quantitative? That means you have specific objectivity is to be targeted. It could be your sales and earnings, it could be the population statistics, it could be the number of products that were sold in the last year. So, what is the data that you are trying to present here? Now, if you are trying to present data, depending upon the audience that you have, what kinds of the charts that fits your data is very important. So, nearly all the organizations has quantitative information which they collect or they put it in their database system itself. The data visualization now allows the persons or the organizations to present this data in a simple visual way, so that it makes sense at a glance itself. Quantitative data is ideal for visualization, because when you put numbers, we can compare them, we can have a good plot out of them. It summarizes the essential characteristics that allows you to present, disregard the exceptions. Sometimes the data is only qualitative, that means you can only present yes or no, but this yes or no, how many numbers of yes and no, how many times, how many people have made yes and no, those percentages, these could be quantified further as well. Which chart fits your data, that is very important. Now, depending upon the kind of the audience, these two are connected. One thing is, if my data is qualitative, it is only yes or no, I can only have very limited kinds of charts. I can only have maybe number of people who have said yes or no, that could be put in a pie chart itself, for example. Or if it is a quantitative data with different detailed information, we have the height and the weight of the students, right, the number of students who are there in a specific class. This is one data, height, weight, then also age of the students in a class or the month in which they were born, then height, weight, the month in which they are born, and their eating habits. For example, the person who is obese would have lesser height to weight ratio. So, these kinds of the quantitative information is important. So, which chart fits best depends upon the kind of the data and also the kind of the audience, as I just mentioned before. These are the 4 tips or 4 points that we need to keep it in mind. If an audience is a data science intellect, those who are maybe able to understand the complex charts itself, you can present accordingly. But if the audience here are maybe the directors of the certain companies, or you have certain investors, those who have only money, or you have people in ministry, those who only have to give the funds, then data has to be in a simpler form. Anyway, data has to be in a simple form. So, it depends upon the kind of audience that you have. The professionals, the investors, the directors would have different view, the data scientists, the students, the learners, the organization, middle or low level managers would have different viewpoint. So, these 4 points are always to be kept in mind. With this, I would like to have a break with my data visualization lecture, and I would like to show certain examples and what are the different categories of the charts, plots, graphs that we have, that I will discuss in the next lecture. Thank you.